Hello everyone, my name is Kyle, and we are here with the next episode of Nerd Talks talking about the origins behind Christmas. Today, Christmas is celebrated by putting up lights, getting trees, giving gifts to children and your relatives and your loved ones, and you open them up on Christmas morning, you eat a lot of food, you pass out, you get fat. But what is the meaning behind Christmas? Where did it originate from, and what is the true meaning of it today? That's what we're going to be getting into. So we're going to go ahead and start with the ancient holiday traditions. Back in the ancient times in Europe, primarily in Scandinavia and the Upper Norselands, Christmas was what was called Yule. Now, Yule was a celebration that would last actually a very long period of time. It wasn't just one single day. Now, this was started in December 21st. And what would happen was the village elders, the men of the house and everything would go out and they would cut the largest tree they could find. And they would bring it back and they would burn it. And Yule actually lasted as long as there was any bit of the log left. Yule would last as long one log would burn for. So sometimes the log would burn for 2 or 3 days. Sometimes it lasts as far as 12 days to 2 weeks. So Yule was a long drawn out event. Now during this time, what would happen is that there would be a large log in the center of town, and then there would be an individual log that people would burn at their homes and gathering places. The Yule would last as long as the tribal one would burn, but each individual household, it would bring a fortune. And the fortune would be as many times as the log would spark. And if you guys have ever burned wood before, it would pop and all these sparks would come out. Well, how many sparks would come out of the Yule log was actually a fortune that would tell you how many pigs or cows were going to be born on your farm. Now, most of the Norse, they would breed either pigs or cows, and this would provide meat. The Norse were meat lovers. They loved it. It was great. The individual logs at home would tell the fortune of how many cows or pigs you were going to have. Now, what they would do is they would kill most of the cows and pigs before winter turned in, so you didn't have to feed them over the winter, and they would store all the meat. Now, all the meat would be eaten during this period, during the Yule period. So while that log was burning, people were feasting, and they were the wine and everything would start to ferment around this period as well. So everyone would be drinking wine, even the kids. They would be eating meat, and this would go on until the log was done. And basically, it was a long party. There wasn't really any, as far as the Scandinavians. This wasn't really much of a religious holiday. They did honor the pagan god Odin. He was believed to preside over the holiday and watch over people. So while he was presiding, they would make sacrifices to Odin and things like that. They would usually sacrifice the best cow, but then they'd eat it afterwards. So really, it wasn't really significant. This was more of a celebration, trying to get over the dulls of winter, and to eat a lot of meat and get drunk. That was basically the main purpose of this. Now, elsewhere, there was a celebration called Saturnalia, which was the Roman holiday, and this would preside over December 25th. Which is very interesting because that's the day that we celebrate Christmas. Saturnalia was celebrated on the 25th. This was in reverence to the Roman god Saturn, and this would actually start in the beginning of the month. What happened during Saturnalia is it would last for the entire month of December, and the whole society, the societal structure of Rome would be turned upside down. The slaves would become masters over the household. The poor would run Rome. Then the children, schools and businesses would be shut down so even the kids can join into this fun. The masters would become servants to slaves. It was very interesting. And it would pretty much end on December 25th. And December 25th was the main event. This was called Juvenalia. Juvenalia was a feast honoring the children of Rome. This was also kind of a celebratory period of Mithra. Mithra was born on this day. It was the infant god. Mithra was actually born from a rock, and the Romans, it was a very, very sacred day. It was some of the most sacred days for Romans, for the god Mithra. So, interestingly enough, we celebrate the birth of Jesus on the day Mithra was born as well. Now, after hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, we have finally hit to the period of the height of the Roman Catholic Church. If we can remember, our Catholic friends helped us change Halloween, and here they are changing up everything for Christmas. So all of this started in the year 430, when a new pope, Pope Pius I, noticed that we do not have a celebration for the birth of Jesus. Well, the birth of Jesus, actually, there wasn't really ever given a date. Most Christians and even the Catholic Church view that Jesus was born around April 14th. But as far as, that's our guess. As far as, the actual date, there really isn't one. So Pope Pius was already having issues with the College of Cardinals because the College of Cardinals were trying to end pagan holidays. This is around the same time as well when Halloween was starting to change up as well, and as many other holidays as well that we'll get into closer to when those holidays are celebrated. But Pope Pius decided to combine paganism and Christianity together to not upset the pagans at this time. Now, you got to remember, during this time of the Roman Empire, they were converting over to Christianity, and many of these pagans, many of these old pagan households were extremely indifferent to Christianity. So this was the way the Catholic Church viewed that they can bring them into the fold by converting these holidays, so it makes it easier for them. So what he did is he took the birth of Mithra and said, okay, we're going to change Mithra into Jesus, and we're going to change the Junalia to Christmas instead. And what we're also going to do is he did a complete turnaround. What he said, we're also going to combine this in with Yule, because many of these Norse areas were under Roman influence already. The Roman Catholic Church began spreading out through Scandinavia, so he's like, this is perfect. We're going to change the Yule season into the Christmas season. So we're going to change this whole day, because most of the time Yule was celebrated for 12 days. Well, in the Catholic Church, Christmas is 12 days long. Not one day, it's 12. So, interestingly enough, it was also changed into 12 days of Christmas celebrated by the Catholic Church and 12 days of Yule, completely the same. So, what happened is now they completely changed it and implemented it for Yule and for the celebration of Junalia with Mithra. So they were able to change two pagan holidays and turn it into one Catholic holiday, and it worked extremely well. Most of Scandinavia was converted into Catholicism at this time. It worked extremely well, just like Halloween. It worked well as well. So that is how the ancient holiday was changed into what we view today as Christmas. So what is Christmas to Catholicism? Because the way Christmas is to Catholicism is the way Christmas has been viewed. So Christmas, of course, is the Nativity. This is when Mary and Joseph were going to Bethlehem. This was due to the Romans were actually redoing their census. So in order to do the census, the people used to they'd have to go back to their town where they were born in, because that's where all their records was in the Roman offices in the basilicas. So they had to go back to the Roman basilica, and that's where Mary bore Jesus. So this is the night when Christmas Eve was the night where he really was born, and then on the 25th was the celebration of his birth, just like with Mithra. Now, what happened is that this obviously started the whole Christian story with Jesus. So for Christmas, for Christians and much of the Christian world, this is a celebration of the birth of Christ. This is a celebration of that. To Catholics, this is also a time to venerate Mary as well, and honoring the Mother of God. To Protestants, this is just a celebration of Christ. So if you'll notice, many times, if you are in a Catholic home, you're going to see a lot of nativities, and if you're in a Protestant home, you're just going to see baby Jesus. You're not going to see that, because Protestants view Mary as a demagogue of the Catholic Church. So when the Protestants separated from the Catholic faith, they pretty much threw out Mary altogether, because that was a sign of the old Catholic ways, and Protestant means to protest. So in order to protest against the Catholic Church, they've disowned Mary. So you won't see a lot of Mary in Protestant Christmas celebrations. Now, to get into other things. Obviously, with Christmas, a huge thing is Santa Claus. Santa Claus is huge, and we are going to go ahead and get into who Santa Claus is. Well, Santa Claus actually is fairly new. Santa Claus really didn't hit the scenes till the 1800s. So what was celebrated before? Well, there really wasn't anything. It was a day. Christmas was a day where people had a feast and they went to church. That was it. The whole gift giving didn't really come around until the 1700s through the legend of what was called Saint Nicholas. I know you probably have heard that Santa Claus is also called jolly old Saint Nick. That is because Santa Claus literally is Saint Nicholas. Now, Saint Nicholas, he was actually a Greek. Now, he had fairly wealthy parents, and he was a devout Christian. Now, his parents died during this epidemic. There was a huge epidemic that spread through Greece and Turkey, and many, many people died, and his parents died as well. So he grew up alone, and he had a passion for children because he had such a rough childhood. He didn't want to see the children suffer. Now, a famous legend that he had was when St. Nicholas was fairly young, it was believed to be around in his mid-20s, witnessed 3 girls on a street prostituting themselves. Now, the legend has it that these girls were between the ages of 12 and 14. They were very, very young. And their father was forcing them to do this because he couldn't take care of them. So he forced them to prostitute themselves in order to bring in money to the home so he can feed them. Now, St. Nicholas went up to these children and he actually saved them. He went up to them, he actually gave them a lot, because remember, he had a lot of wealth from his parents, and he gave this wealth to saving children. He gave enough wealth to give dowries to the father so they could be married off into good homes. So ever since then, St. Nicholas has always been a saint for the children. He has been viewed many times throughout history. His spirit has come to save children. He rose 3 children in Rome who were murdered from the dead. He's also a patron of sailors. Apparently, he has shown up on ships to save sailors from wicked storms. But primarily, he has been viewed saving children's lives. So during the 1700s, as a symbol for giving gifts to children, because during the 1700s, parents didn't get gifts, it was just the children. The children, an image for the season of the person who gives gifts to children was Saint Nicholas. This was more primarily over in Eastern Europe, because Saint Nicholas is actually an Orthodox saint. He was a Catholic saint, but not until much later. So Saint Nicholas was always viewed in very, very heavy coats and things like that. So this is where Santa Claus getting into the red coat comes from. This is because obviously in Eastern Europe it's much, much colder during the winter. So Saint Nicholas was always shown wearing heavy set clothes. Now, Saint Nicholas was never imaged as a fat person, but he did have a beard. He had a hefty beard. So where Santa Claus became fat was when it came over into America. This was more of a marketing scheme because they viewed that the children, it was more comforting to show that he was kind of an overweight set person, because he was happy, holly, jolly, and he ate a lot. There is a conspiracy that he was fat because it was actually a push from cookie companies, because children should eat a lot of sweets during the holidays. So in order to sell more sweets, they showed Santa as fat, so it's okay to be fat and it's okay to eat. So there was a conspiracy theory as to he's fat because it was actually a marketing scheme by cookie companies like Sara Lee and things like that. Now, really, that is where Saint Nick came from. Santa was actually a saint. Now, obviously, so how on earth did we get from the name Saint Nicholas to Santa Claus? Well, this actually came about from the Salvation Army. The Salvation Army actually had this push during the 1840s for homeless people to get jobs so they can afford Christmas gifts or be able to afford something for the Christmas season. So what they did is there was an old Dutch legend that had St. Nicholas wearing the red coats and everything like that. So what they did is they took this legend and they got a bunch of red coats and they went out to homeless people and said, hey, wear this. Go to stores and shopping areas and things like that. Ring bells at street corners for the Salvation Army, and we can give those to the poor and to you guys so you guys can have a nice Christmas. Now, they started calling these guys Santa Clauses because really it was way easier to say the word Santa and send a Sinter Santa. See kind of how that works. So they went out and they started sending these Santa Clauses out to the shopping centers, and this really attracted kids. Kids loved it. So that's how companies started taking the image of this Santa Claus and they started putting them out everywhere, and malls to this day and shopping centers have the Santas out there. This all came from the Salvation Army. This is where it originated from. And now the whole United States and much of Europe and the rest of the world use Santa Claus as a marketing thing because it really resonated with children. And that's how it all started. It started in America it was started as a charity, and then it turned into a whole marketing thing, and then it just took off from there. So that is where Santa came from. Now, the reindeer and everything like that, this was more of a marketing thing. Santa and his reindeer and things like that. There wasn't really anything with the legend with Saint Nick as far as reindeer. They just said, how can Santa, get around, because they used to have Santa used to go into malls and things for marketing schemes, was riding on horses and things like that. So they used to put antlers on the horse and said it's a reindeer, because in Eastern Europe there's not very many horses, but there's a lot of reindeer. So there you go. That's kind of where the reindeer came from. And then it became a whole television thing during the 50s when they started with Rudolph and things like that. And then it became more of a Disney thing and, all that kind of stuff. So it was more for the kids, all that good kind of stuff. So really the reindeer didn't really have any much part of the legend or anything like that. It was just added on later so, people can sell more things. So there you go. That's how that all kind of turned around. Anyway, guys, that's the origin of Christmas. It was an ancient pagan holiday that got turned by the Catholics. Then it got twisted and turned as more cultures kind of came in and added more things, and then it became more of a marketing thing, and that's where we have it. So we have a very mixed view of Christmas. And, to many people, it really depends on who you are. If you're a Christian, then it's going to be about the birth of Jesus. If you're not Christian, and if you're you're not religious, it's just a time to celebrate with family. So either way, Christmas is still polarized. It's still, there's so many mixed things, especially here in the U.S. where you have a lot of Christians, so it's about the birth of Jesus. And then you have, there's non-believers as well who take it more as a marketing thing. At the end of the day, it's how you view it. But this is really the history behind it. And even though if you don't celebrate Christmas for the religious things, it's very important to know the history behind this holiday. Because I think if you understand the history of the holiday, you can come to respect it for what it is. And for me, that's really cool as a person who can view things like this. And now I can view Christmas as not just a day for family, but it has such a deep history that goes back thousands of years. And now, from those times to now, it's still being celebrated. And now, it's been taken all over the world. It's not just a European and Western holiday. This is celebrated in Asia. This is celebrated in Africa. This is celebrated all over the world. And to me, that takes a minute to pause and respect this day for what it is. This is the Christmas episode of Nerd Talks. I hope you guys enjoyed this. And for the next episode, we are going to be talking about a whole multitude of things. And also, we're going to be having a podcast coming up very, very soon. And I hope you all have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. See ya.